Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast, and welcome to our spoiler-filled review for Season 3 of the FX series, The Bear. Okay, is it just me, or like, for a week after watching this show, if you get even remotely stressed out, do you just hear that guitar riff in your head? Sha-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. This is the Geekcentric podcast, and I want to thank you for joining us for this evening's service. If you're joining us for the first time, we are a podcast focusing on the world of movies, TV shows, games, toys, and collectibles, and all things geek-centric. My name is Kev, but you can call me Chef, and I will be your expediter for the episode. I will be in charge of getting our thoughts and opinions to you, the guest, with expediency and ensuring they are absolutely delicious. Now, a podcast, much like a properly functioning kitchen, is all about teamwork and communication, and I am so thrilled to be joined by a couple of sizzling, pan-fried podcast artistes. Their wit is as sharp as a knife, and their movie IQs can't be beat or whisked. Chef Justin, Chef Nate, how are we doing this evening?
Yes, Chef.
Yes, Chef.
All right. We got you. You guys get the drill. I don't even have to explain how I want this kitchen functioning tonight. I like it.
Yes, Chef.
Well, let's not waste any time. I think it's time to run the pass and let you know what's on tonight's menu. We are excited to be discussing Season 3, or maybe I should say Season 3 Part 1 of FX's The Bear. This discussion will include spoilers and all the juicy details. So if you haven't watched Season 3 of The Bear yet, this episode is none of your fucking business. But seriously, go watch it on the fly and come back to see if you agree with our thoughts on all that happened. Now, before we get to the main course, I wanted to start things off with a lovely aperitif. One of the trademarks of the show has always been showing incredible food being prepared. Honestly, I get so hungry watching the show. I almost like plan on eating a lot before and then making sure I have a snack so that I'm covered in both bases.
Well, the problem is because then if I eat while I'm watching it, everything I'm eating pales in comparison. So it's like I'd eat it and just get sad. So it's, if the show wasn't making me sad enough in certain moments, my meal might in comparison.
Mm-hmm. Right. But not only does it get my juices flowing, but it also made me kind of think about some of the incredible meals and restaurant experiences I've had. Mm-hmm. And I thought that maybe we could share a few of those. Is there a meal or restaurant experience you've had where the food was just unbelievably good, or maybe there was a certain amount of creativity in the dishes that you'd never seen before? Justin, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, this was you had posed this question in our group chat, and I was kind of racking my head trying to think of a food experience that I had that was really like that sat with me. I think I actually haven't had that sort of high culinary art food experience yet. Granted, I think as this show kind of talks about, you don't need to go to high culinary places just to get that experience. You can get that in any sort of type of restaurant. It's just that attention to detail. So most recently, I actually went to a restaurant in the York region area that haven't been to in a while. They had a new menu. It's called The Locale in Aurora, and they very much pride themselves on pairing the right flavors for the season in their dishes, and they are,
if it grows together, it goes together.
Absolutely. And I think we're amidst the summer menu, so a lot of like sort of fresh, even some very fruit forward thinking dishes were on the menu, but it was all about the presentation of everything. It was all about the thought that goes into it. And I was amidst The Bear Season 3, and then I went to this restaurant, so I couldn't help but think about what it means to be someone that's bringing that food out to the people that are in the restaurant, but also the people that are behind the scenes, the cooks that are and the stories that they might have of how they have gotten into this industry, and everything was absolutely beautiful. It was presented in a way where, again, it's wholesome. It's very pasta forward, if you will. Like I got a pasta dish that sounded absolutely delicious with some braised veal and in a sort of simple butter and garlic sauce, and it was fantastic. And it was the right amount. It was just the right amount of food, And yeah, that was the most recent one that I had. And yeah, I think it kind of cultivates that attitude of a meal being something that you enjoy with all your senses simultaneously. And yeah, that's
Yeah, where
my selection.
you were bending over and smelling the plate and all the. I can almost just picture now. The camera's behind your back. It's panning around as the plate's dropped off, and we zoom in to reveal that it's you eating a dish prepared by.
Oh yeah, I would have. They also had a seared octopus with like these large tentacles with Brussels sprouts that were all charred, and just the flavor of the smoky charredness with like this sort of sweet potato, mashed potato vibe that was underneath it all was absolutely delicious. And even when that came out, the presentation of it, I took a couple pictures of it because I was like, oh, that's really cool how they decided to present it with these like long tentacles kind of hanging over.
But no, that does sound delicious. And I have been to Locale several times, and they are always bringing the good stuff. Nate, how about yourself?
Yeah, I appreciate the amount of vamping as I'm like furiously trying to find the name of this restaurant. Because I know the dish, I remembered the dish and I remembered the people. You know what I mean? But the name of the restaurant, I'm pretty sure it was like a number, and they had the sports on, but it was high end, and it's near the Rogers Center, or near the whatever the center.
Yeah.
Oh, they're gone. Actually, that place is
They're
gone.
gone.
They're
Okay, so it doesn't
gone.
matter if I shout them out. So without their name, dude, I'm telling you, I was celebrating, just an anniversary, and I went there, and it was aged candied bacon, thick cut candied bacon. Now, this isn't like a high end place. This is, up there, I'd say slightly higher end than the keg, right? But
It's like a $3.50 sign.
There you go. And I will tell you, this candied bacon changed my life. It was it's as thick as it sounds. It was expensive, but it tasted expensive. And it was one of those things where I was like, I didn't think that my favorite thing food-wise could get better. And then they made it candied and aged, and it I'm telling you, I still dream about it. I went to an all you can eat like steakhouse in the States, in Chicago, and they had like a candied bacon like bar, like it was almost like I was at a salad bar, but they just had like a whole bowl of candied bacon. It was not as good as this place in Toronto that was shut down. So unfortunately, they're gone. But yeah, that's my answer for you: is the thick cut candied bacon at that restaurant that's no longer there.
Well, you took us to that restaurant after Fan Expo one year.
I did, yes,
and I will say you laid it on thick.
Yes.
And you did not lie. It lived up to your hype. It was absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah. How about yourself?
Well, I'm kind of like you, Justin, where I'm like, as I watch a show like this, I'm like, man, I've never eaten at a restaurant that has like a Michelin star, and I've always wanted to. I've always wanted to go out and just have like a $600 dinner and eat like the smallest portions of food ever, but that are so meticulously put together and all the ingredients are so well thought out. I've never done it. I'd love to go to like a 6-course sort of tasting menu meal, that sort of thing. But one meal that I did have about 5 years ago on a Royal Caribbean cruise really stood out. The restaurant on the ship was called Wonderland. And they kind of play with this fun, whimsical idea of food relating to the elements. And so everything is sort of inspired by the earth, and they sort of play on that. And so, for instance, there was an appetizer called Vegetables in the Garden. And they were just simple sauteed carrots and beets and whatnot. But they were put into a pile of soil, almost like they'd been planted in the ground, but the soil was just crumbled pumpernickel bread, but it looked like vegetables in the garden. And then there was a deconstructed heirloom salad where they take the tomato, pluck out the stem, they take the tomato, put it in a food processor, blend it all up, put in like sugars, balsamic, all this stuff, and then recreate this tomato. Somehow, I guess they freeze it or something.
That's
wild.
And
they stick the stem back on and you crack it open and it sort of just oozes onto the cheese and everything. Like, it was just this really fun, visceral experience, going right down into even the desserts. And, it was just like a piece of cake and mango ice cream, but made to look like mushrooms on a pile of dirt. And this time the dirt was powdered sugar. And so it might not be like the best, most high-end meal I've ever had, but the imagination and creativity that went into all the dishes. And it was so fun just seeing everybody else around the table's dishes and going, oh my God, that's so neat and so fun. So it was definitely a memorable experience in that regard.
Yeah, I think it goes with hand in hand with what we're about to probably talk about in the bear, and the idea of the thoughtfulness that goes into these dishes, right? Like, again, it doesn't necessarily need to be a Michelin star. I think there's room for all of these restaurants that care enough and pay enough attention to what they're doing and the kind of service that they provide, that you almost live and breathe it when you step into their restaurant in all capacities. And then the way the dish is presented to you, which sounds so cool of how they would have handled it at this restaurant, its imagination and its thoughtfulness is what really stands out, and the care, right? Because it could just be food on a plate, but it's so much more. It's about giving you an experience that feels immersive.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, they're like, you even look at like a chain restaurant, and so many of these chain restaurants, the menus are interchangeable. They all have the same dishes on the menus, but something that you sort of brought to my attention, Justin, because your cousin or uncle works in the field of creating dishes for like restaurants, like everything from, I think, Mary Brown's Chicken. He moved on over to
Pure and Simple,
the breakfast place, and like the places that find people who care enough, they can bring so much thought and expression into dishes that you might find everywhere, but sometimes they really stand out, and that difference is the person who's come up with those ideas and really brought them to life.
Yeah, shout out to the cheeseburger eggs Benedict at Pure and Simple. Dope stuff. Who, your cousin, I guess, who created that?
I don't know.
Cousin.
I don't know what I know he's done the kimchi eggs Benedict.
Okay.
He's brought some new flavors, but yeah, to your point, to have a job that is very much dedicated to the R&D of the food experience and playing with that in relation to understanding the clientele and the existence of this restaurant, what makes sense, right? And also maybe even pushing boundaries, right? Again, not to stay on the topic of my cousin who's done this stuff, but when he was at Mary Brown's, it was very basic stuff, and he pushed them to go, more bold with flavor and spice, and it paid off for them in the long run in introducing these new flavors into their menu. That again were just, they were kind of no-brainers to a certain degree, but at the same time, as you pointed out, Kevin, someone has to have that imagination and have to have that sense of like, what can we do with these parameters and bring something new? And I think that's what's so cool about the culinary arts, right? Which is why it's an art.
Now imagine doing that and then also having to make the food and then also having to clean the kitchen. Oh, wait, we don't have to imagine it. We watched it.
Yeah, that is true. Okay, now we're getting into like maybe more specifics and everything, which we will get to. And before this episode dies on the pass and needs to be refired, I think it's time to get to our thoughts on The Bear Season 3. When we last left Carmi, Sydney, Richie, and the rest of the gang, they had just finished service for the launch of their brand new restaurant, The Bear. While they managed to get through dinner, it was far from an ideal situation. Carmi sacrificed everything important in his life, including his relationships with romantic interest Claire and cousin brother Richie, in exchange for what he believed to be perfection in his culinary endeavors. After explosive tirades towards two of the most important people in his life, including one while trapped in a freezer, Carmi is left feeling empty and alone on what should be the happiest night of his life. And that is exactly where we pick up in Season 3. This season brings back audience favorites Jeremy Allen White, Eben Moss Backrack, Ayo Edebri, Liza Colon Zaya, Abby Elliott, Maddie Matheson, Oliver Platt, my boy, and so many more, and also features the directorial debut of Ayo Edebri. Season 3 is available now on Disney+. With the insane amount of awards this show has won, it has set the bar incredibly high for itself, and I am so curious to know Guys, if you thought it lived up to those expectations, let's get right in there. What worked for us with this season? Nate.
Yes, chef. Hands, chef. I think the interesting thing with this season is that I'm not going to say that it really did reach the highs of a season 1 or a season 2. It there's a big motif of get us there, chef. And that's what this season really did feel like to me, is the getting us there season. Everyone's kind of in a bit of a holding pattern this season, and that's kind of where it went. But I do think in the midst of getting there, we got some really, really beautiful character moments. We got like a couple of what felt like bottle episodes.
Yeah, two
with
actually. Yeah,
with Nat and with Tina. And I really, really love the fact that even if we aren't necessarily getting the as intense moments, this isn't, a Fishes episode, or there's no Fishes episode really in this season. Um, it still manages to go to places that we can appreciate, take time to appreciate, and really, really focus in on. And yeah, I think this was maybe one of the more beautiful seasons out of the three. But I do think for a general audience, for people that have maybe come to expect some of those high crazy moments from a season 1, season 2, they may be left a little disappointed. But I think they need to maybe just keep watching, because we're, like you said, it very much felt like a part 1.
Well, yeah, like if you have watched this season and you're joining us, then you would know that Doors is probably the most intense episode of
Mm-hmm.
the season, in that it kind of continues with that regimen of like sort of frantic, hectic nature of what it's like running this restaurant, right? Not a restaurant, but the Bear. But as Nate was mentioning, it might not have necessarily reached the highs of season 1 or season 2, because I feel like this season is less goal oriented and more people focused and more character driven. Not to say that the previous seasons haven't been, but there was a tangible goal in both of those seasons. I think the first season was for Carmy making this thing work, making it work with the team, setting a standard, and then realizing at the end of that season, we got to start fresh and open up a new restaurant. And then season 2 is about opening up that restaurant. So there's these tangible linear goals that are working in the season. Here in season 3, there's not that. There's just the idea of, well, we're in it. How do we stay afloat? How do we keep this thing going? Right? How do, and much of that pressure is on Carmy, and as we see throughout all the episodes, even in the first episode, it's just him working in the kitchen, working on these numerous dishes, and it's from the fallout of, as you mentioned, the events at the season finale of season 2. So we get this immediate sort of abstract approach to how we understand these characters in this moment. And I really loved how episode 1 really opens with just the idea of pressure on Carmy and what this means to him. And then we start to trickle through the rest of the season and understand each person's pressure, each character's pressure of why they're doing this and why they're there and what they're doing it for. And it may feel like, as you mentioned, Nate, like a bit of a standstill, but I wouldn't even say that. I think each of these characters grew. We just didn't see them grow in relation to a goal, right? We just saw them grow in the sense of being a part of what seems like a really crazy, chaotic experience of running a wanting to achieve Michelin status restaurant.
absolutely. And I think that is kind of, at least in the offshoot of the season, that sort of feels like what the goal for this season is going to be. It almost seems like, oh, okay, the restaurant's open. They're going to see what they could do. They're going to work towards getting that first Michelin star. And because of where Carmy is in his headspace, it's almost derailed instantly because of these nagging obsessions from his past that drive him way off course and make it an even bigger challenge than it should be. I have to say, I really like that we're right in here. This is our third time, not just third season, but our third review of the show. We don't need to sit here and go, the acting's great, the editing's great, the production. No, we know that shit. It's amazing and it wins all the awards. Like, what about this season works and doesn't? And I'm kind of with you, Nate, on the sense that, sure, we see a bit of character growth. I think the story with Richie sort of, working towards moving on from Tiffany. Natalie finally telling her mother how she feels in order to express her fears in becoming a mother herself.
Mm-hmm.
Marcus, having to start a new life without his mother, and what that means for him and who he can replace her with in terms of surrounding himself with the people he needs to be his best self.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we see some growth, except for in our two lead characters. And while Jeremy Allen White has so much to work with here and does a terrific job, I think Io's kind of left in the background here. I don't think we see Sydney have that much to work with. We know what her dilemma is and we know how she's struggling, but that's just one of the many things that by the end of the season you're left going, oh, we have no idea where that's going, eh? Okay,
Well, I will say, I think, to me, though, I really do think that was another moment where I think Richie, Carmi, and Sydney, and to a certain degree Natalie, they were all very stalled out in this season, where they all have to like sort of deal with something, and they all don't want to. And so we kind of get to see those parallels between those characters, and I really loved with Ao with Sydney, because her not signing the agreement gave us moments to see her in different ways. And I have to say, I absolutely adored her relationship with Tina this season. Just seeing her consistently, where Carmi was very much like now, chef, like now, what's going on? Refire. And we get to see Sydney actually be that caring chef. And she reminded me a lot in those moments of the chef in the final episode that sort of starts the episode, where he's showing Carmi how to pull out the wishbone. And I got those warm fuzzies anytime she interacted with Tina. And I really like that. And I like that it was almost because of this stalling and this sort of not really going to where she needs to go, that we were able to get some of those moments.
Yeah, you bring up the idea of everyone having to deal with something in this season. There's this running gag throughout the season with the Fact brothers about being haunted and getting haunted and so on.
With.
Yeah, that's what they're dealing with. But if you actually think about it, that's what everyone's dealing with. Everyone is being haunted by their past in some way, shape, or form, and by the decisions that they've made. That is what this season really feels like it's about. It's about understanding each of these characters and what is haunting them, what they can't get beyond, what they can't move past.
Yeah.
And to your point, Sydney might have felt like she was just kind of moving in a very linear status. She shows a lot of empathy towards Tina. I totally agree. But, she has this panic attack in the final moments of the finale. And I think in this moment, we start to realize that everything that Carmi has been feeling from his past mentor, who was very hard on him, he's actually now, not instinctively, has put that pressure and that weight on Sydney. And Sydney is now absorbing that and feeling the weight of the work that she's doing with Carmi at the Bear and what she wants to do and where she wants to go. And it's overwhelming. There's a lot of even parallels between this, and I know it's really obscure, but Inside Out too. In a lot of ways.
Anxiety is literally a character.
Exactly. But
she's in Inside Out too.
That's what I mean. But like at the end of the day, though, I think it's the idea that everyone's putting a lot of pressure on themselves. And I think in this moment where we see Sydney have this breakdown, she's looking at this article that started out to be so simple, and look at where she is now and the pressure that she's feeling in this situation, and the idea of how many people have pushed her to get here. The weight of that is weighing on her. And maybe these characters feel a little stalled out because we know that there's a season 4 coming. Like the fact that this season ends with a to be continued, which I'm not crazy about, but like it at the end of the day, it very much like we knew that there would be a season 4. You know what I mean? So I don't know if we needed a to be continued as much as we just needed that sort of that ending. Like he gets the review, but we don't know what the review says, right? We don't know.
But I think that is why I said towards the beginning, season 3, part 1, it's because we got that to be continued. And because unlike at the beginning of season 1, where it's like, okay, we got the money, we're fixing things up. The end of season 2, okay, the restaurant is open. We did it. We're here. Now let's go and get that star. This season didn't leave us on a note of like, okay, that next step was accomplished. Where do we go from here? It was very much like we are only starting this, overwhelming wave of anxiety and stress and all the things that are sort of happening to these characters.
And I wonder if next season might be it. If we
Well, I was going to ask this later, but I'll ask it now because it's a great time. Could you see next season being it? Would you be okay with that? All good things must come to an end, and it's better to end when you're at your absolute best. And I think if this is, the first half of sort of this longer final season, I think that could really work for me. We don't need to see them 5 years down the road with 2 Michelin stars. I don't think that's as interesting as getting to that first one and sort of making this work. So I think if next season is the last one, I'm perfectly okay with that.
Yeah, Chef. I agree. I agree with that sentiment entirely, because it's better when shows can know when they need to end and have the confidence to say this is where we're cutting it off, rather than being forced.
If there was a Fak Brothers spin-off somehow and it was just the two of them on the road, my guy, I would
then
100%.
But then
just
you get
go
John
watch Matty
Cena.
Matheson cook, man.
Yeah, that's true.
Like,
but you get John
if you watch
Cena.
his videos, that's what you have. Like,
But that show could work, and you get John Cena in on that. And I honestly, like, I think that's like, as far as this show being such a highlight in the industry, like, people in the industry are fans of this show, right? And then this is how you get like some of the amazing cameos. So to see John Cena pop up in one of these episodes as, like, I guess he was like a Fak cousin or brother or something.
He was a cousin.
I think he was a cousin, right? Sammy.
He's not
his
from
name?
that same.
Yeah,
he's
exactly.
Not quite from the same family.
Yeah, exactly.
The physique quite matches there.
Yeah. So
no,
I
but let me tell you,
thought that was hilarious.
Speaking of John Cena, and I knew where the joke was going as soon as it started, and it still landed. Him thinking they want him to go get a real fucking duck is unbelievable. Do I just go to the park?
As far as John Cena is concerned, I was delighted to see him. And I enjoyed seeing him, and I thought it was funny that he was a Fak cousin. I did get pulled out quite a bit seeing him, just because, sure, he was fun to see and he made some good jokes. I'm just very happy he's not like a main character in this show, just because the performances are just so realistic. They're so human that putting him in the mix, I just kept getting pulled out. I don't know. I didn't think he did the best job performance-wise, but I was happy he was there.
Hilarious. He was perfect.
It was a fun time.
He was perfect for it. I think he fit right in, just like everyone else has in this season and in the past seasons. It's adopting it. Like, when you see Jamie Lee Curtis in this, it's just like, Jesus, like, they got Jamie
but she's not Jamie Lee Curtis in this. Do you know what I mean? Like, like Olivia Colman isn't Olivia Colman. Will Poulter isn't Will Poulter. John Cena is John Cena. And
I would argue Will Poulter is Will
Poulter,
Poulter, but no, I would argue he is. I think that he's very much, again, a lot of these characters, a lot of these cameos come with a caveat of playing a specific character that you can relate to. So I think that part of what made John Cena, you've seen him as the funny guy in these movies and so on and so forth. So that's probably why there's a bit of a distance to it. But the way he bantered off of them, the way he fit in, it was perfect. I was actually really impressed. It didn't.
He was a great cameo. I'm just all I'm saying is I'm just happy he's not a main character. So.
I would like to see him as a main character.
Okay,
it'd be funny.
Right. But bring him back for the next season, main character.
I could see him pop in once next season, and
are we equating that to a main character? Sure. Like I wouldn't. The Fak Brothers aren't even necessarily main characters, if you would say. But
this season they certainly
had
in
a lot.
my mind they were.
They get more screen time than I, man.
But I honestly think that it was really about the haunting, right? And the idea how they're experiencing their own thing in a real comedic way that is very much like sort of ritualistic amongst friends and family who you wrong, that you're haunted by them, right? Like it's not unheard of. So the idea of seeing that in relation to watching the internal struggles of each character going through their own quote unquote haunting, what haunts them, there was such a distinct message here for kind of giving an overarching theme to each of these character experience, even though they might not necessarily all intertwine. They're stacked on each other. They're very parallel with one another. They're going through the same motions. So it was really cool to see that.
And Kevin, I will say, not just because of our body shapes, but I love the idea that we would be the Fact brothers
fuck
if we
yeah,
were
buddy.
in
Fuck
this if we
yeah.
were in this universe. And I think you'd be Ted, and I think we might be a little bit of both. But I loved any time that they would interact, and you get you get oh sweetie, like you get Nat just being like so nice to them, and just everyone calls them sweetie and my love and all this stuff. They're just always cared for, but they just also care so much, and
They
I
talk
love
down
it.
to them though, which
I
is
love it.
like they see
No,
it as
but they
very
don't
endearing.
care.
Yeah,
They don't
they see
care
it as
because
endearing. Yeah.
they know what their place is. They are some of the most confident characters in this show, and I think my favorite thing about the two of them is that when they are having those conversations back and forth, you're right, they move so quickly. It feels like it's the same brain speaking, and I love that. I think they are just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, like Theodore just like, oh, I think I've made Carmi happy. Like he's just striving to fit in and be a part of the team.
Yeah.
But see, and that's my thing. The banter between Ricky, who plays Theodore, and Maddie, who plays Neil, their banter is so natural and so fluid. It just feels like they're not even acting. They're just and that's for most of the cast, right? They're just themselves. Yeah. And again, going back to John Cena coming into this dynamic and being able to add something, I thought was hilarious. He fit right into their banter, and again, it kind of goes across the board with all this entire cast that there's such a belief on their part for the characters that they portray that really does connect with the audience in a lot of ways.
Well, and speaking of characters, we do get a chance to explore the backstory and the histories of some of the lesser characters, our secondary players like Tina, and an episode like Napkins. It was essential in learning more about her, and it was so good. That's the episode that was directed by Ao.
Oh, cool.
That was her. Yeah, and it's the highest rated episode on IMDb.
Mm-hmm.
So it's getting a lot of love, but at the same time, as great as it was to learn more about where Tina's come from and everything, it did kind of feel like a filler episode in a season where we're not reaching those bigger goals. Did you guys find that at all with any of the episodes? Was that an issue for you at all?
No, I feel like Napkins is probably my favorite episode of the season because of the reason why it stays so singular and focused in its sort of character study of Tina. Again, I don't think that the goal for season 3 was to necessarily give us big goals rather than to slow things down a little bit and focus more on the people. And maybe that's going to be, as to your point of what you both are saying, that's a little jarring, given the fact that there was just such, affirmative goals in the first two seasons, that here it just feels sort of abstract. I was describing it to Nate. Like it feels sort of like outside of itself, very, spiritual as well too, right? And the way memories and how we experience memories is sort of captured in these flashback sequences, either in order and not. But Napkins is an episode that's like Forks for Richie, or in season 2, in season 2, I believe it's Honeydew for Marcus. Like these episodes that stay focused on the character to give us more depth to them. So I feel like this was essential. We needed this sort of episode in this season because we've gotten that in previous seasons before.
Well, I want to shout out, Ao directing that episode specifically. Kudos to her, and kudos to this writing team, and kudos to her for any creative input she had on that, because, if I'm understanding right, she's a younger person, but she's clearly an old soul, and she clearly is able to understand, coming from like looking at that point of view of someone like Tina attempting to get a job. I love the sort of social commentary. My favorite thing was just how frustrated Tina was at seeing all these super young people in all these jobs, and that conversation she has with Michael at the end with John Bernthal, who was incredible. It was just so fantastic to sort of hear her say both how frustrating it was, but then also how beautiful it was at the same time. I thought that was so excellent. I honestly, I was, again, as I said at the top, I was so okay with the direction they were going, and I think episode 1 does such a good job of getting you in that mindset for what
Mhm.
this season is going to be.
Exactly. Yeah.
It is memories. It is
Yeah.
the, it's what is it called? It's called like the tomorrow and all the days or something, or tomorrow. It's called tomorrow, and then the description says the next day and the days that led to it. And I love that because it's just, it's very much what you were saying, Justin. It's memories that aren't exactly playing out in the exact order, but that's how memories work. When I go back to think of a meal, I might forget certain elements, and I'll remember little fractions here and there. And I think it was just so well done, but it does take a minute to get into it. It takes a moment for you to sort of go, oh, this is what they're doing. And by the end of the episode, I think they absolutely nailed it. I will say my favorite episode, and it is the other bottle episode, and that would be episode 8, which is called Ice Chips. I absolutely adored this episode. I think Abby Elliott as Natalie and Jamie Lee Curtis as Mama Dee. Listen, Jamie Lee Curtis, she absolutely deserved the award she got for Everything Everywhere All at Once. But if I had a perfect world where Oscars were handed out for TV performances, this is where I would give it to her.
They're
This
called
was some of the
Emmys.
most stunning work. Sure, I understand they're called Emmys, but I'm just saying I would take that award and put it there. This was honestly just some of the most stunning work I've ever seen her do. She's so incredibly believable. And I went from, because that character, I'll be honest with you, after Fishes, and it was really tough, and she brought me back a little bit in the episode where she stands outside the restaurant and doesn't go in. But this episode had me going from holy shit, why is she here, she's the worst person for this situation, all the way to literally going he alongside her because it was the right thing to do and she knew best. And it was absolutely beautiful. It was such a phenomenal episode, and it's one of those episodes that just like has those moments that will stick with me for the rest of my life. It will stick with me as much as the impact of Fishes, but in a much better way. I don't get a headache when I think back to it.
Speaking of favorite episodes, you guys mentioned what is my favorite episode. And one of the reasons it's my favorite is because it felt very much like an episode of The Bear, even though it's completely different than the best episodes that we've seen in the show in previous seasons. I'm talking about like the one take episodes that we get during a dinner service.
Ooh.
Or that chaotic episode of Fishes where it's just like, oh my God, everything is happening all at once. And this episode is the complete opposite of that, but shows just how technically amazing the show is. And this is the first episode. I just thought it was incredible to go through 30-40 minutes of a TV show with like no dialogue. You're just watching people do like relatively mundane things, but it's the importance of what those actions mean to the character and how they tell you that without words. I thought it was amazing. And like as I was watching this, I was just thinking they must have filmed Jeremy Allen White doing like cooking, scrubbing floors for like 10-15 hours.
Yeah.
And then somebody edited that into an unbelievable piece of art. Like in my opinion, it's one of the best episodes of television I've ever seen from an editing standpoint, to be able to weave different parts of a person's history through just simple actions and to choose those perfect moments and time them out the way they did. I watched that with my mouth open, just like, oh, the whole time. It also made me really, really hungry, as this show tends to do. But that one showed a lot of very delicious looking food. And then again, I know I've mentioned this in previous reviews for the show, but just giving me these like flashbacks, both good and positive, like waves of nostalgia of working in a kitchen and like just standing there. I would have to pluck stems of thyme and I'd have to fill this like, half-gallon bucket of just little tiny thyme leaves, and I would just pluck thousands of them into this bin, and that would be just for that night's dinner service. You know what I mean? And like, just, Sarah and I joked as we were watching the show, and she said to me, I have never in my life wanted to do something or have been as passionate about something as he is about cooking.
Yeah.
And that made me think about like why it just wasn't the right job for me. While I have really positive memories of it and enjoyed a lot of it, I was like, it's just not this is not what I want to do. But like his passion is so unbelievably just palpable in that every waking second of his life is spent getting better at this one thing that he does. And I just thought that episode encapsulated that so well.
I do want to quickly shout out the intro that they did that featured, it looked like real footage, I guess, of all the people throughout the industry, all facets of the industry. We were seeing people in high-end restaurants. We were seeing people in diners. We were seeing people in the, just where they're shipping off the lettuce or whatever they do with lettuce. Seeing just all of these like family-owned businesses and just these real people. It's such a great way to remind you that early in the season to be like, remember just how beautiful, how human, how real this show is and how messy it can be. And I loved that episode because it felt like a stage play. And it very much started off with Carmen, and then more and more characters would be added to the scene as if they were just on stage in one central location. Very specific, very performative. I absolutely really, really adored that intro. And yeah, I believe that they were all real people. That's what I'm going to believe that they were showcasing.
I think they were.
Yeah.
The show doesn't shy away from being a little docu at times, right? A little improvised, and a lot of people have said that Christopher Storer is such a collaborative uh, director, and he's written these characters in a way where he's worked with each of them to kind of find how the characters connect with the actors so that they can bring their best sort of unique performances. So I don't doubt that the opening to season 2 is very much a docu real life situation where they've gone into diners and other places across Chicago to kind of capture it. And as you mentioned, Kevin, like episode 1 does really set the standard. It really does show like how this season is going to be, and it's a little abstract. It's a little outside of the box because it is so memory focused. And you're right, the editing is insane in the sense that there's not a linear time to it. It's just about the experiences and how memories might be just how you remember something looking or how you might have felt in that moment. And we saw all of that kind of in that first episode, and the intensity and the pressure too. And then in episode 2, the way we kick things off, I think again it continues that conversation of talking about this season is going to be about people, right? Just as much as the first episode was about the main character, this entire season is just about the people. And that is why we have this sort of docu style opening that really does take us in and out of restaurants and shows us the real side of it all.
Well, and we get to episode 9 where Olivia Colman's character literally says it's about people, and it was just such a perfect little speech.
Episode 10, right? Episode 10.
Is it episode 10, the finale? I got my notes all mixed up here. I do want to just call out in episode 10, there's a conversation between some chefs at a table, and you just mentioned like that some of it feels docu-series. I don't know chefs.
They're real chefs.
And
They're
they
real
were probably
chefs, yeah.
having like
Exactly.
a podcast style real conversation, and they just filmed it and then added in different lines from AO, or maybe AO was acting alongside them, but they were real.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I'm just like, it was, oh my gosh. And it's just such a perfect way to sort of be like, of course it's authentic because they're real chefs, but at the same time, it's like, they don't need these incredible actors because it's just real. Like, I'm sorry. It was so good. And then to get that sort of 1-2 punch from that episode of those moments into Jeremy Allen White, into Carmy, confronting David, that sequence just when David walks away and you get that just insane face that Carmy makes of just like trying not to explode and that single tear rolling down his eye, bro, is phenomenal. Like, of course he's phenomenal. I know, Kevin, you said like, oh, we already know they're all good actors, but that was such a good moment. And I just wanted to, it hit.
And and it is the other half of episode 1. Like if you were to take all of them out and just watch episode 1 and episode 10, it is the other half of that. He's confronting that
demon.
That demon, exactly. The thing that's haunting him. The thing that is haunting him, he is confronting it head on. And the way David approaches it, and it's just like, I made you better. So you can be as pissed as you want, but you're welcome. That drove Carmi mad because he knows that he's right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the whole mentality around this idea of mentors and how we value them and what they do, and we see how mentors what mentors mean to Carmi, because Carmi has come from a different past, a past where he feels like he has to prove himself, and to be knocked down so many pegs by some asshole of a chef like David, but then to be nurtured and be appreciated by other mentors like Olivia Colman's character,
Mm-hmm.
or the other chef that was helping him do the family style meal at the beginning, I believe, of was it the finale,
I think it's
or
the finale. Yeah.
It was
yeah,
also the
yeah,
finale, yeah.
yeah. So again, to have these other mentors that we see in this episode be so nurturing, it goes to show that you know guidance comes in all different facets. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And different styles of pressure. And I think that that's what's really telling, because even in that moment of when when Carmi wants to explode, it's because he knows David's right. He has made him better because he has said, "I'm gonna fucking prove you wrong," and he's been driving himself to do that. So
Well, I
it's
love the idea though that Natalie is going to raise her baby in a way that was better than how she was raised. And then we've got Carmi, who is going to raise this restaurant, this baby of his and the team around him in a way better. I think that idea that he can achieve what David did to him, but in a different way, because we see Carmi go to those dark places, right? We see him go to those places where he is treating not nearly as bad as David did to him, but we start to see that there's a little bit of that darkness in
well,
him,
that's why I think
and so
Sydney has that breakdown at the
right,
end, right?
yeah,
Has a
Well,
lot to do
because
with the
Carmi
pressure
has
from
become everything he didn't want to be.
yeah,
Yeah.
He has become Chef David, and
Yes.
he is doing to her what Chef David
Exactly.
did to him.
Exactly.
chef.
And that's why
Yep.
that moment sticks, right? You have him confronting, and then you go toward a few more beats, and then you get to that moment where she has her anxiety attack, and you start to see the parallels. You start to see how he has actually become what he hated most about his mentor. Again, I don't think it's directly, you know what I mean? Or it's more indirect because of the amount of pressure that was given to him. He is putting that pressure out. And that is why he has kind of put Sydney in this box, if you will.
Couldn't agree more. But honestly, I think we could probably talk about the amazing storytelling that happens in this show and happened in this season, but we should not let our thoughts sit under the heat lamp any longer, or they might dry out. So let's get into our final thoughts and give a score for season 3 of The Bear. Well, once again, we will be doing this out of 5 Michelin stars. I know the actual restaurant scoring system is only up to 3, but it's my goddamn episode, and I'll do whatever the hell I want. So Nate, why don't you lead us off?
Yeah, okay. So, this season, like I said, this is the taking us there season. This is the season that we are getting to that finish line. The restaurant is now open and we're in it, but we haven't gotten there. And not only that, but the finish line keeps moving. That's what this season is. And these moments, well, some of them are not as stress inducing, and we don't get those crazy insane moments that we had from the second season, or the one shot cool stuff. We're still getting these really, really intricate, dedicated, human, real moments, and that really worked for me. And I think, for a lot of shows where, I come out of a season 3 and I sort of feel, you know what, I don't think that worked for me as good as a season 1 and 2. This is still some of the best television I've ever seen. And, I think if it wasn't for some of those bottle episodes, for me, I probably would have been closer to a 4 out of 5 Michelin stars. I don't think, with my previous 2 seasons, 5 out of 5, I don't think I went anything under that. This one I am going to go to a 4.5 Michelin stars, because again, as much as, maybe it wasn't as wild or bombastic at times, these moments are still so important, because every second.
Just how about yourself?
Yeah, I agree with you, Nate. I think, season 3 of The Bear continues to excel at putting character development at the forefront. It's delving into the lives of the people behind the food we love. This season feels akin to a psychological study of trauma and exploring how past experiences shape our decisions and influence our futures. And the show's nuanced storytelling and coupled with the powerful performances from the entire cast that feels so human and real, just offer a deeply moving and insightful look into, again, the human condition, making it a very much a must watch show, from season 1 into season 3. I think it continues it so well. But as you mentioned, Nate, season 3, it does maintain that strong character driven focus, but it may not feel as compelling as previous seasons due to the lack of, as I mentioned before, sort of concrete overarching goals like the previous 2 seasons gave us, leading into season 3. But unlike past seasons, which featured clear objectives and drove the narrative forward, this season serves more as a setup for a season 4. We're taking a slow down. It's the calm before the storm, if you will, before we get into what will inevitably be a very robust season 4, as we get into the next chapter of the bear and the restaurant itself. The storyline itself introduces new challenges and ambitions, and it's laying all this groundwork for what promises to be an exciting continuation. And I'm looking forward to seeing what's next. But through its first 3 seasons, I think The Bear has really proven to be a near perfect show, and consistently a rich blend of a very heartfelt character exploration with compelling storytelling. Each season builds on the last, deepening our understanding of the complex individuals who inhabit this restaurant, and this cooking world, and all of the surrounding characters that influence it. It's just how the show masterfully balances moments of intense drama with very poignant reflections on personal growth through things like trauma, resilience, loss. It's a dedication to character first storytelling and an authentic, immersive experience that has resonated with me. I absolutely love this season. I'm giving it a 5 out of 5 Michelin stars.
Yeah, I don't think there's a wrong score to give a season of television that's this good. I think it's neat that it's going to hit people differently and resonate with them in different ways, and it's challenging its audience by changing its format a little, which is kind of cool. Personally, I think some of the most interesting viewpoints on what happens in this season come from the real life chefs that they brought in for sort of these fun and interesting cameos throughout the season. In the finale, during the funeral of Ever, Chef Christina Tossi shares her thoughts on the dynamics of a healthy and functioning relationship between a boss and their employees in a restaurant. She says, "The greatest mistake is working for a bad boss, such that what it unlocks in you is the culture that you choose to create." And with that, we have exactly everything that Carmy does wrong, and also everything he isn't doing to ensure he's getting the most out of his employees, his team. And he's not ensuring that they're getting the same chances he was given to grow and learn through experience. Instead of being like the bosses he admired and respected most, his obsession with Chef David has led him to become everything he hated about his time working for him and his mortal enemy. And it's so perfect that Carmy isn't listening as Chef Tossi is saying this, because it's almost like he's also ignoring everything he's learned, including that incredible lesson about nurturing that you talked about, Nate, and the power of food that he gets early in his career from Chef Thomas Keller, another real life chef. Carmy's obsession with trying to prove Chef David wrong has essentially made him forget or ignore every positive and beneficial lesson that he learned to get him where he is today. And I honestly think that's like the most fascinating storyline this show has told yet. And I can't wait to see where it goes next. I just think it took a little too long to get there. Like you said, Nate, every second counts. Obviously, I loved every episode of the season. The writing, acting, production values, they're all like top notch. They remain top notch, if not better than ever. But this season suffered for me just a bit in terms of feeling more like a part one of a complete story rather than a full and complete arch. And for that reason and that reason alone, I'm giving season 3 of The Bear 4.5 out of 5 Michelin stars. Well, that is it. We have survived another busy, exciting, intense podcast service. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And please, if you haven't already, give us a favorable review wherever you listen to podcasts. Like, please, 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 according to Uncle Jimmy, the future of this podcast depends on it. And if you don't, I swear to God, I will haunt you. I will haunt you. We'd love to know, what were your favorite episodes or moments from the season? Did it live up to your expectations or leave a bad taste in your mouth? You can do so by writing into us at wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. That's wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. Or if that feels like we're giving you a few non-negotiables and you'd rather foster the razzle-dazzle in the dream, hit us up on our socials. Justin, where can they do that?
Well, they can reach us at wearegeekcentric at gmail.com. Oh, did you already do that part? Did you do the
Yes,
email?
Chef.
Oh, he did.
Come
Okay,
on,
cool.
Chef. You have to pay attention. Faster, Chef. Refire.
Every second counts.
Well, they can reach us on Twitter, or the app formerly known as Twitter, at GeekcentricYT, or on Instagram at wearegeekcentric.
Keep in mind, we also have a ton of other episodes covering the latest and greatest shows and movies out now, including our ongoing watch club for Disney Plus's Star Wars, The Acolyte. That last episode kind of slapped. Where will this story go with just a few weeks left? We also have our spoiler-free review for House of the Dragon Season 2, Episodes 1 to 4, and All Is Not Well in Westeros. Plus, be sure to check out some of our incredible interviews, including with fellow Canadian animators from the blockbuster smash hit. Holy cow, that movie is raking in the dough, Inside Out 2. And with the directors and cast of Ultraman Rising. Of course, we have so many more incredible interviews with the cast and crews of some of our favorite shows. These almost need to be seen to be believed, so why not give them a watch over at youtube.com/geekcentric. Also, you can join us in our Discord by clicking the link in our show notes so we can keep the conversation going and talk directly with you once you've seen this or any of the shows or movies we cover. And of course, the hot geek summer is just getting started, and we will have a ton of more reviews, interviews, and so much more coming out for the biggest in TV and movies and all things geek-centric all summer long. But until then, Nate, Justin, thanks for hanging out and doing what we love. And as we say,
Doors. Love ya.
Get home safe, chefs.
Peace.